Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Andy Deal. I'm your host for this event. And today we have Madison Rye. She's the VP of PLM at Saratech. I don't know of anybody who has such a packed calendar as Madison, but thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. And we'll have a very compelling discussion about digital transformation. So, welcome, Madison.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're talking about digital transformation. So we're talking about defining and understanding what digital transformation is. We're talking about the technologies behind digital transformation. And Madison will also cover successful strategy behind digital transformation, and more importantly, how to measure the impact and sustain the change. Now, Madison, digital transformation is nothing new. This topic has been around for a while. What has been happening in the background that companies now are starting to pay attention and need to focus on digital transformation? What is happening? What's the driving force behind all of this?
Yeah, I think that people are starting to see the huge benefit. So with any technological change, those that adopt it and use it to their advantage, they succeed, and those that don't end up out of business and they can't compete. That we've seen that so many examples from history back to when individual motors ran factories. The whole, there's one motor on the basement floor, and there were belts driving every machine in that factory, and they were replaced by motors that were on each machine, so that then if the motor went down, the whole factory wasn't down, just that machine went down. Very, very, over time, couple years or so, those factories that didn't take advantage of that went out of business. I know another example of a carbide tool and die shop that I know is fabulous machinist. I mean, the big three automotive came to him for racing parts and all sorts of stuff.
Mm,
He could do stuff that nobody else could do, and
yeah.
he just wasn't a computer guy. So he didn't adopt CNC when it came along, and those around him could then be at the machine to they'd program, and then they'd walk away, let it run, and then they could program something else, and they started to be able to do stuff like tool path validation and that kind of thing. So he slowly went out of business. Took 3 to 4 years, but he went out of business. So that's just what happens when these advantages that you see with technology come along, and I think companies now are seeing the huge advantages to getting to that better, faster, cheaper state. Getting better quality, getting it done faster, and getting it done for less money.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. People have to adapt, but so I know you, and some people on the call know you, but some other people might not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So obviously, my name is Madison Rye. I started my engineering career at Cummins Engine Company after graduating from, and I'll have to say it, the Ohio State University, and then I moved to a Siemens partner and then Siemens, doing CAE simulation and PLM along the way. I came to Saratech at the end of last year, but really the last 15 years of my career, I've been going out to visit customers to see how they make things. That's my favorite part of the job. I'm very passionate about helping companies achieve their goals and eliminate barriers, really through digitalization and what we're talking about today. And you can see, some of my hobbies there. Our family loves to boat. We have a wake setter, and we do wake surfing. It's a lot of fun. And then my other favorite thing to do to relax is work on cars. I've been doing that my whole life. My husband and I just pulled out a F100 1965 Ford from the garage, or from a barn at his grandfather's place, and we're starting to restore that. So
That looks awesome. That sounds like a very interesting project.
yeah.
Now, what comes to your mind when we talk about digital transformation? What comes to mind?
Well, I guess, imagine if for a minute you've been notified by your AI and analytics engine that there's a field issue that's going to be reported by customers. You get a kind of a preemptive warning about this, and you ask your computer to find the parts and show you what's associated with that issue and analyze potential solutions. you can really use augmented reality with your software tools to analyze and optimize in order to narrow down on the best solution. And you easily know what the impact will be for the whole life cycle of the product. So how does the change impact design, analysis, testing, manufacturing, aftermarket, financials, even the customer? Every possible piece of information you need is available to you to make your decision. That's really one glimpse of a possibility. And those things, a lot of them are already available today to use.
All right. Now, talking about digital transformation, how do you define what digital transformation is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was looking for quite a while, trying, because, to me, I wanted an official definition. I know what it is. I wanted an official definition, but everything, a lot of times it's just very complex and a lot of big words and things in a string that, you have to. I just wanted something simple. Get down to the core. Let's talk about what it really is. So I just did Google AI, and I was really happy to see that it was pretty darn simple. So digital transformation is a strategic process that uses digital technology to improve or create new business processes, product, service, culture, and customer experiences. It's a reimagining of business in the digital age that can help companies stay competitive by evolving to meet customer and market expectations. And the reason I like that is because I was looking for something to explain digital transformation that involves using technology, but not just in business processes, but in the products themselves, with people, and making a better experience for the people that cause, that drive cultural change.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk a lot about this going forward. So
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so digital transformation obviously applies to multiple industry, and for our industry, what are the components of digital transformation?
yeah, so this is from Harvard Business Review. I picked this up quite a while ago, and I really like it because it starts with people. You've got to have people at the forefront. That could be your customer, your employee, your supplier, so many different people. They all have knowledge. They all have best practices to share. You go to those companies, you see so many people with tribal knowledge, but how do you
Hmm.
share that in a large company? So to scale that knowledge, we have to put it in digital format. And this data could be out of customer, a process, a product, materials. If it's you know, a process industry, it could be the recipe. If it's a discrete industry, mechanical, electrical, and software information, from the whole life cycle through inception to service. We really need to capture that, and we need to capture it digitally. The next piece that comes is insight. There's always an overwhelming amount of data, but tools that organize and present the data in a way people can interpret that data and use trends so that we get meaningful insight, that makes the data very valuable. So we have the insight, now we need action. Maybe there's a certain feature or need that the customer has, they're asking for. You see it even on social media or discussion boards or through sales. You can then use that to influence the product, the design, the development, and marketing. So AI can use, AI can make predictions, and data can give us the insights, but valuable change really requires an action plan. So the last thing there is, now that you evaluate the results, and you go back to the data, because the results actually become a part of that new richer data set, and that's going to continue to drive the change forward.
Okay, so the result and this continuous feedback loop will make the insight valuable over time, right? As you develop synergies between human and technology and all of these processes.
Yeah, exactly. So this infinity loop represents that continuous feedback loop you're talking about, Andy, or a closed loop system in a product life cycle. There's so many other aspects that can be included in digital transformation, like strategic management or customer relationships or finance, but we're going to use product development as an example. So you start with product, the ideation here at number one, and you got to have a target schedule, a set of requirements, and a target cost. Every project has to start that way. Then you have quoting and ordering. You move to product design and development, then verification, validation, manufacturing, shipping and logistics, and possibly installation and commissioning. And then you take all the insight you've learn through this whole process, and you use it to continuously improve. And we call this data that's generated during that whole life cycle in that infinity loop, and the physical or the virtual representation of the physical part, the digital twin. So it's not just a CAD, it's the CAD plus all of this data, performance calculations, jigs and fixtures, tooling, manufacturing, work instructions, every piece of data that's associated with it. And the CAD, that's the digital twin. And then the digital thread is then based on a use case. So it ensures the seamless flow of all that data, all that, the whole digital twin to the right people at the right time in order to make informed decisions that are really data-based and include all the information that's needed. So you can see that there are multiple digital threads that we can help with, connectivity and flow in order to get to that state of better, faster, cheaper that we talked about at the beginning. And an example, of breaking this chain is I've seen in industry very often people take the BOM out from their PLM or PDM, or maybe they just type it into Excel from the get-go, but they're manipulating it to get to a manufacturing BOM so that they have some sort of process information, and then they type it into the ERP system. That breaks this connection that you see here. So you're going to have errors with manual entry. You're going to have it's going to take more time, and then it has to be repeated when change happens. So another example of this is using CAD. If you take that CAD file out into a step file and then put it into a CAM system, and you don't take advantage of things like PMI and so forth to do your CAM, and then probing. These make the data flow really disconnected.
Yeah, and to your point, you see that all the time at customers and people that we work with out there, right? So the goal of digital transformation is really to digitize this entire process, right? To improve the product itself and really adding the tools for people to do their jobs, safer, faster, and more importantly, provide the customer with a better experience. Correct?
Yeah, you've got it exactly right. And if you look at the first the pillar of what you're talking about there, the first pillar of digital transformation, according to Harvard Business Review, is uplifting the IT systems. So in order to do what you're talking about there, you have to have the right systems in place. And we're using, again, the product development lifecycle as an example. So each of these that you see here has to be integrated together. And many times I see people say, and this happens all the time, just last week happened, where ERP says, hey, we can do PLM, or MES says, hey, we can do ERP, or ERP says, hey, we can do MES. In reality, all of these systems have to be in place for a reason. The CRM is really your customer data. You might have a customer portal, addresses. You're not going to put customer addresses in PLM, for example. The enterprise resource planning, ERP, is all about financials and inventory. Product lifecycle management, this is where the design and development engineering really happens. Really, what are we going to make? Systems like Team Center are used for this. And the manufacturing execution system. So how are we going to make it? Work orders, training for operators, and tack time, and so forth. So if you think about it, a single source of truth, everybody talks about getting that single source of truth. That's not having just one system for everything. It's really having one set of data, that digital twin we talked about, that's unique for the system or part. This can be stored in multiple systems as long as they're connected and they share information so nothing's repeated. And this is a lot of data. You can imagine how much gets generated during this whole life cycle. But if you get to where you really have by your role only the data that you need to do a particular function of your job, delivered to you in one location, no matter what the source of it is, ERP, MES, whatever, we call that a single pane of glass view. And you can use like low code like Mendix to create this. So you're just looking at one screen, you're going to do your job, and you click on what you need to do your job, and the data is there. You could easily use that data without then being inundated and getting into analysis paralysis with overload.
Yeah, yeah. So now talking about all these different systems, obviously we're getting to technologies now, right? So
Mhm.
what are the technologies behind digital transformation?
Yeah, great. So anybody remember Schoolhouse Rock? Do you remember that, Randy? Or Andy?
Yeah, schoolhouse,
I'm
right?
pro- I'm, pro-
Of
I'm probably
course.
probably dating myself, but anyway, if you've ever remembered, knowledge is power. So that's that's the truth. Knowledge is power. So if we have the systems in place and we have the data that we need, we can apply technology to enhance the experience that everyone's involved in the product. You mentioned this at the beginning. So there's just so many examples. The sky's the limit on what you can do. Um, and while I'm talking, maybe everybody could put their ideas of what they've seen in the chat when it comes to technologies you've seen used at your company or other companies involved in digital transformation. So 3D printing is one. I mean, once we have a better handle on safely printing metal with the right surface finish, of course, we can send printers to the field and print spare parts. And imagine the impact of that. I mean, it's huge. People are already doing this with plastic parts and some metal parts for sure now. In the dental industry, they're starting to print those Invisalign braces. This impact is going to be huge. It's early in the technology, but it's really coming along. With advanced analytics and AI, we can predict machine breakdowns. For example, I witnessed a piece of a mining equipment that was, I mean, it's huge. The tires alone were twice the height of a human. I mean, it's huge mining equipment. And it was too big to bring to the shop, so we witnessed a group coming out to repair that thing, and the guy in charge of the mine was like, it's not broken down, it's still running. And literally within 4 hours, that thing was broken down, and they fixed it. So, I mean, that the impact there again is huge. Now the mine operator can keep running with just an hour downtime, as opposed to having to call a shop, figure out how to get somebody out there, and all of that. Imagine your car telling you, hey, it's time, you're going to have a breakdown. You better go in and get it fixed. We're starting to do those things already. Have you ever seen have you ever seen that wine, 19 Crimes? Ever, Andy?
No, I
Have
haven't.
you
I
ever, okay.
haven't.
You have to go get a bottle of 19 Crimes, because so on the
Now I
face of it,
will.
on the label they have an old time criminal, and
Okay.
if you hold your phone up against the label, the criminal actually talks to you and tells you the crime they did. So
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
really cool.
it's very entertaining. But anyway, augmented reality is another thing that can really help, not just in marketing, but imagine that for healthcare, like for sight impaired people, holding
Yeah.
their prescription bottle up and holding the phone over it, and it reads the prescription and the instructions and all of that. There's so many possibilities there. I've seen 24 cameras and data feeds being used remotely on a computer, and that was for a large piece of equipment on a manufacturing floor. Not only predictive maintenance could be collected from the data, but also over-the-air software, updates could be done, and remote troubleshooting and repair guidance. I mean, think you could then charge for uptime. You could say, okay, now that you have all that data and you know what the uptime is going to be, you could guarantee uptime and charge a subscription for that to your customer. Someday shortly, robots are going to do the repair, and
Yeah.
that's coming. It's already in the works too. Cloud is another thing. Cloud is really big. I hate the name cloud. I don't know why. It's just a data center somewhere else. It's not owned and operated by you. Sounds very nebulous. But anyway, you can eliminate the need to really worry about infrastructure. You can do infrastructure as a service or as a software, even software as a service, I guess. Um, the applications included. So it's just really bring your own data and you use it. We talked about digital twins and digitalization, IoT. Everything's connected. I mean, geez, my refrigerator tells me on my phone if the door's open too long or the filter needs to be changed. But someday it's going to know the contents and reorder for me when I run low, not just because it's out, but based on my usage. You can imagine all the data collected here gives the manufacturer information on how to make the product better in all operating conditions. It's like having an endless amount of field tests. I mean, that's huge. Mobility has allowed for us to work remotely during COVID, but also allowing remote service with augmented reality. You can now hold your iPad up to certain products, and you can get an overlay of the CAD and BOM and find the right part to replace and get instructions to do so. We're working with some fantastic companies that you know of, Andy, that are working on combining technologies like robotics and analytics and AI for robots that don't just do a repeatable job over and over again, but they actually see and assess what needs to be done. They learn, and they continue to learn as they do it. So
Oh
that's just
yeah.
fantastic.
I mean, if you look look at the stack of technology that's available and people are actually using out there, it's really is overwhelming, right? So you mentioned earlier about paralysis by analysis. How do we put all of this together? Like, it can be so overwhelming. What strategy can you put together to make sure that this implementation is successful? What's the
Yeah, yeah,
approach?
this is a great question because it's a big picture, like you're saying. It's huge. So where do we start? So many times I see companies, I deal with them all the time. The other last one, $2 million sunk in 2 years. They haven't launched. There's no business value to the company after 2 years and $2 million. That's a huge problem. So we really need to move from the big bang approach to pushing out, getting all the bells and whistles, everything out, the whole thing at one time, to where we really assess we use minimum viable product approach, MVP, and we assess the as is state, we determine the to be state, and then we break off small pieces that bring business value right away. And then we use the savings to drive the next step. And of course, critical in this is organizational change management. How much change can be absorbed, identifying the change network, like change agents that are internal to the company. Every time we do this, we find, those people from within that really do want to change, and they're like your advocates in there.
Yeah.
Taking inputs from the team to ensure they feel heard and know the challenges happening, or that this is a challenge, but it's going to benefit the company, and here's why. Having a clear communication strategy, and most importantly, KPIs. You have to measure. You have to measure the change before and after to make sure that it's bringing that business value, and therefore you have to have measurable things as your KPIs. So if we look at this assess and plan piece in a little bit more detail, and I want to, I guess I want to mention that so many people, again, I see out there is like, hey, we've got a problem, let's throw technology at it. You really have to start with the business capabilities that are needed to align with the business strategy. We break those into phases, use RICE-based scoring, reach, impact, confidence, and effort. You're trying to get to the biggest bang for your buck, really. You're trying to find the thing that's going to affect benefit the company most, but costs and effort are low. And then we put together a process and functional requirements for the MVP, the minimum viable product, based on that scoring and inputs from the business. And finally, we move to the technical specifications, like bringing in Team Center or something like that. The next piece then is really executing. Executing with an agile mentality. This is agile project management methodology. We have PI planning. We can break the PI planning down into the business needs so that they go into epics and further break that down into user stories. We have a quality framework and publish the progress against the plan, and then we have testing, automated testing to save time and money. And the last piece, on check and support, we're reporting the progress against the metrics and using tools that we have for adoption metrics. But it's not just all about adoption. There are other KPIs that have to be measured, and we monitor there's always a technical support spike when you release something or a feature deployment, and then you watch that spike come down, and you track that and you prepare for that. And of course, you report on that based on your governance plan with the proper RACI involved.
Okay. So, you know, we talked about the technology stack, we talked about implementation, needing to get buy-in and really agreement from top to bottom, right? In terms of getting digital transformation going in your organization. But, there's a really big piece out there that you've referred to previously, is how do you measure the impact? Right? What's the approach and how do you measure it and making it sustainable?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the key piece there is you got to keep the momentum going. So the roadmap, again, has phases that are like stair steps that you see here, leading to the to-be state. And this, again, is an example, but it could be anything that you're doing, in any project you're approaching with digital transformation. You break it into those pieces. that lead to the to-be state, but each step or each phase addresses a critical business need or issue, providing immediate business value, and then moving you closer to that to-be state. This is not an overnight process. It takes time. The business priorities are going to change during that time, so we have to adjust the roadmap as needed. So the first phase for a business, let's say they have PDM, or maybe they don't even have PDM, and they have CRM and ERP with no MES. It could be implementation of Team Center for data control, security, visualization, and simple workflow. Then it could be moving to BOM management. So you have a design BOM, and your design BOM is CAD BOM, and it's sub-assemblies, assembly, sub-assemblies, piece parts below it, and then you have your engineering BOM. And your engineering BOM, maybe you want to organize that a little bit differently into groups that aren't necessarily sub-assemblies, but it's the way you look at the product, or the way you segment the product. And then you put your parts in the right groups in an engineering BOM, and you have effectivity, design effectivity instead of revision. So on the CAD side, you're doing rev control. On the EBOM side, your engineering BOM, you're controlling the date the part comes in and the date the part goes out. So at any moment in time, you can look at that engineering BOM and know, on that date, this is how, we released it. And then you move to the manufacturing BOM. So now the BOM is not, grouped that way at all. It's grouped by how it's going to be built. So the area that it's going to be built in, the cell maybe, what parts go into that cell, what work instructions, the bill of process, really. And then you get to the service BOM. And the service BOM is really a living, breathing document that everything from the time that thing leaves the factory throughout its whole life now, it has to have that updated. So every part that's changed needs to be included so that when the technician goes out to look at it or even does remote, troubleshooting, they know exactly what's on that, part. They can have critical spare parts, they're ready to go, so the downtime is very minimal. All of that is BOM management. And then, connecting that to the ERP system, pushing that into the ERP system so that now you have a real hardware, software, electrical BOM, and it's in the shape that it needs to be for manufacturing. Then requirements, schedule and cost integration, because of course, again, everything that starts has to have a set of requirements, a target schedule, and a target cost. And finally, the implementation of the MES system is pushing this to the people to the floor so they understand how it has to be built with work instructions and making sure they're trained and they're swiping into their cell, and it knows that they're capable of doing that job. They're certified to do the job that they're doing that day. They have the work orders they need. They have the parts they need, and so forth. And again, this all depends on business needs.
Great explanation. Thank you. I know we've been talking a lot, so at this time, what I like to do is open up the floor for Q&A. So folks out there, if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask, please go ahead and type it in the chat box, and then I'll bring those up to Madison so she can help answer. Obviously, in this short amount of time, we can't really deep dive into all of the different. It would literally probably take days just to talk about everything. So if there's anything specific that you want to know or anything specific that you want to learn, takes the next minute or so to type it into the chat box, and I'll bring that up to Madison. While we wait for that, Madison, with all of your experience that you have and working with all of these different customers, what do you think, in your opinion, is the biggest factor that causes failure of digital transformation implementation?
So from what I've seen, it's taking on, not two factors. One is not breaking it into palatable pieces. Trying to boil the ocean, it just doesn't work. And you've got to break it into those steps that deliver value within a 6 months, to a year period, or maybe even sooner, maybe 3 months to 6 month period, so that the business sees that there's value and that savings can then be used to drive the next step. The other thing that I see is not having metrics, not having really measurable things that you can use to say, hey, we were successful at this. We saved the business X amount of money or time or quality is better, or whatever the case may be, depending on what you're doing.
Okay. So I have a question that came in. It's kind of related to that. So you mentioned metrics and KPIs. What KPIs do you use and what KPIs do you see?
Yeah, so a lot of people talk about adoption of the new process or technology, and that's one key metric, how many people you get on board and are using it or adopting it. But others depend on what the issue, the change is solving. So, for example, if you had, outdated or missing work instructions that were causing rework on the floor, let's say, costing the company a lot of money, and issues with delivery time. And a key metric might be to measure the number of units in rework before the change and set a target and then measure again after the change so that you can see if you met that target. Or it could be a reduction in ECRs, the change orders. There's because now we have those new work instructions, we're reducing the number of change orders or the time it takes to do those change orders.
Hmm.
Or maybe accuracy in bomb delivery. Whatever it is that you have to measure it before, you have to set the target and measure it after, because that's the proof then that you've accomplished what you were trying to do with that change.
Oh, great. Thanks. Uh, Another interesting question that came in, and I think we've seen this quite a bit. So we're talking about organization change. How do you deal with, companies that have the culture of, hey, we've been doing this for 50 years. Why do I need to change it? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, we see a lot of that. We really do. That's a great question. The so the way I deal with it is one, to show examples of other companies that have embraced this change and drove significant impact to the business, and those that didn't, and the ones that lost money. And then I also like to do what's called a value discovery analysis that's specific for that company. So I talk to the key stakeholders and I ask a specific set of questions to uncover what the pain points and the repercussions of those pain points are. So, for example, one, revision was used wrong in the actually on the floor, and they made wrong tooling, and they actually made wrong product. So that's a huge impact to the business when it comes to that piece of tooling that they had made, and then having to scrap those parts. So gathering those, all that stakeholder information and then playing it back, um, that really it opens eyes. It says to the people, most, the people want the best for the business. They're trying to do that. Most business have really good people, and they don't understand what the impact is, that they've been doing things the same way over and over. They don't understand what the impact of the business is from these pain points. And so then we make a roadmap to tackle the pain points. And then another aspect, and you mentioned that, is organizational change, is really to drive that change network, like the change agents. We always find a group of people from within the company that really want to have change happen. They know the problems, they know what they're doing to the business, and they want that change. And those people can be the evangelists from within the company. And that makes a huge difference because they can help move the others along.
Okay. Thanks for that, Madison. Another question that came in, can you talk a little bit about the blending of tools from different vendors? Obviously, there's no single company out there that use a single tool from the same vendor. So maybe, a company that uses a CAD tool from Dassault, but MES from Siemens. How do you deal
Sure.
with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. And I think, you've got to make sure that the tools that you're dealing with either have integration allowance, or an open ecosystem. Like, I know a lot of the Siemens tools, they're, one of the fundamental, parts of their accelerator portfolio is openness, so that it doesn't matter what CAD you use, it doesn't matter what ECAD you use or ERP you use. There's an integration that you can do. So, you can use the tool that's, out of the box to use with that integration, or you can use a middleware like MuleSoft to connect the components. But it's really critical to make sure that, one, they allow for connection, and two, that they get connected so that, again, you get to that single source of truth and you're sharing data across instead of repeating it or manually typing it in.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we had for today. Once again, Madison, thank you so much for um, being here today. I know how extremely busy you are, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and information with us and the audience. Uh, Again, everyone, with only 30 minutes, we don't have a lot of time to dive deep into details or specific situation for your organization. So when you log off the webinar today, there's a short survey and Q&A. I mean, at Saratech, we work with so many different companies across different industries, and we've dealt with so many different situations, and they are all unique, but we figure out a way to help you deal with and implement digital transformation for your company. So if please feel free to reach out to us. You can email me or Madison directly or fill out the survey, and we'll follow up and get in touch with you and making sure that we provide you with the help that you need. Thank you, Madison, for your time today, and appreciate you
Thanks,
for
Andy.
being here. And appreciate everyone for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on a future webinar. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.